Hi everyone, how are you? It's Emmanuel and I'm back for another Facebook Live. I hope you've had an amazing weekend. I like to call Mondays Inspirational Monday. So I hope this topic is an inspiration for you or anybody else that you feel relevant. Feel free to share, like, comment, and join in. So this really is a platform for all of us to connect and communicate. It's also one where I get an opportunity to interact with so many more of you than I may face to face. For example, if I was to try and run this as a workshop, each one of you would have to take a certain amount of time off work. But with the blessing of Facebook Live, now it doesn't matter where you are nationally or internationally, I have the opportunity to connect with you. So if you're joining or you will be joining later or watching this, thank you very much. Now today's topic is a recommendation to overcoming the honeymoon stage as soon as possible so the real relationship can begin. I work with hundreds of relationships per year, and I even watch my clients and some of my good friends get into relationships. And there's a phase at the start called the honeymoon. And then once the honeymoon ends, that really is the difference between couples that last and stay together or couples that pretty much end when they see the other side of the person and they get a dose of what the hell's really going on. So I've found that within my life and when assisting clients, that it's really wise to get clear about what the honeymoon phase is, what's to come after the honeymoon phase, and how to appreciate both so that you can be present for as much of the relationship as possible. So I'll start off by defining the honeymoon phase. In the honeymoon phase of any relationship, this is what the ancient Greeks mentioned as when you see more similarities than differences in the person that you're connecting with. So one of my mentors jokingly says, this is when you see a male or a female that you're attracted to and you say, oh wow, you've got two eyes, so do I, and you've got a nose, we've got a lot in common. So you're seeing a lot of similarities and basically looking to find as many of those as possible, and you really feel that that person's connected with you. Then over time, as you get to know the person and you really get to know the person, you find out that there's a contrast of similarities and differences that occur during the relationship. Not only that, you'll generally find as well that as your values change, what's truly most meaningful and valuable to you throughout the relationship, so do the values of your partner. So I know at the start of my relationship with Renee, prior to moving in together, there's a much different contrast to now that we moved in together. So that honeymoon stage was really easy to kind of keep in place while I was in Melbourne and she was in Sydney, and we were flying back and forth because it was easy to kind of have that more positive and happy and all of those vibes. But then once we started living together and getting to know each other, then we got to see the stresses, the perceived stressings and blessings and everything else that went on in between and how that person deals with it, and then how you interact with that mix as well. So whenever you're labeling somebody and building them up and seeing more positives and negatives, benefits and drawbacks, service and disservice, you're setting up what they call tall poppy syndrome. So in Australia, we're quite aware of this. We keep building somebody up to an unrealistic point and an expectation that they can never meet. We create that within a fantasy within our own heads, a fantasy meaning anything that has more pleasure than pain, benefits and drawbacks, when every person is worthy of love and has two sides. And usually that fantasy is in our model of the world. It's not in theirs. And we date somebody with similar values and complementary opposite values. So if we think that they're going to live in our values, if we think that they're going to live in accordance to the imaginary figure in our head and be more positive than negative, eventually when they do the contrary or the opposite to what we perceived, then we rip them down off a pedestal, and that's where we realize that they were only human. So my wisest advice, and I used this with a client, I had a client that came in and saw me and she said, you know, when I date guys, for some reason, I just don't express myself. I constantly lose my power in the relationship. And I feel like they run the relationship and not me. And I must have some role in this, because as much as I think that these guys are pricks for doing that, at the same time, I'm constantly attracting this. So what's my role in this? How am I bringing this to continually keep happening? And when I spoke to this particular client, I said, what I'm watching at the moment is the dynamics of you being highly altruistic, and it's attracting a narcissism from your partner. Altruism being her putting herself below the needs of the other person and keeping an eye on all of their needs, but minimizing herself and building resentment and being unauthentic to what she wants, exaggerating their worth and doing everything for them. And because of she was exaggerating their worth and doing everything and minimizing herself, they just continued to think that that was going to occur. So she felt like they were narcissistically projecting onto her. Now, we have strategies for acquiring things as adults, whether we're children or adults, every human being has a strategy for acquiring things in their life. When she was doing everything for her partners and lowering herself and exaggerating their worth, this turned her into a mother-like figure, where she did everything for them. And because they got used to having everything done, they would end up like little children. And they would communicate, and if they didn't get their way, they would kick and scream or kind of alter their voice, and she would back down, and that became their strategy for acquiring what they wanted. So as long as she had them on a pedestal, she'd put up with all of that because she was really, really scared to lose everything that she had infatuated over. Yeah, and I can see that Jordan's here. These teachings are gold. Thanks, Jordan. And you would be great wisdom in this, and you're teaching these and assisting others to see this as well, which is fantastic. But as long as she had them on a pedestal, everything that we extracted that she saw in them, that she had exaggerated, she was minimizing herself for to make sure that she could keep it instead of seeing where she owned that in herself. So she was saying they had extreme beauty and power and financial mastery, but she wasn't seeing where she had that in her life. So she would consistently keep giving. The dynamics would continue to build the contrast until she eventually would just crack it and express herself. It was all to bring it back into balance. But the minute that she did, they would usually push away and think, who the hell is this person? Because they'd never seen that side of her before. So when her and I did work together, we extracted and we looked across the timeline of all the relationships that she had had. And there were 4 or 5 examples of this same exchange. And I've seen this in males and females. So by no means is this only a female kind of role. I've seen males that have also minimized themselves in comparison to females and played the same dynamics. So what I said to her in that specific situation was, I said, the sooner you get out of this honeymoon stage, this infatuation, this illusion of more positive than negative that you're placing onto this other person, the less resentment you're going to have and the more equilibrium and equanimity you're going to have within the relationship. When you restore a balance and you have an equal exchange and you see everything in that person for what it really is, I really truly do believe that you never love somebody until you can love both sides of them. And she was loving the positive and scared to see the negative. So she was only dating half of a person, which only existed within a figment of her imagination and not in front of her. Because the person in front of her had 2 sides and was worthy of love. So I said, if you really want to advance a relationship, I recommend as soon as possible, breaking all fantasies and delusions on both sides, getting to really see what you are investing your time, energy, and effort into. So a year down the track, you don't feel, what the hell am I doing with this person? But you get an opportunity to be you. So we did some exercises. I said, in the first 4 weeks, because I found that this is a great period where you actually have probably spent enough time with somebody to get a greater idea of who they are. So for example, if I was to spend 10 minutes in a year with anybody that's doing this Facebook Live, I could look like an absolute champion. If I was to spend a couple of days a week, it would be a little bit harder for me to hold on to that persona, that one-sided vision. A persona is like a mask. It's one part of you, but when you take it off, there's still the whole of you. But if I was to work with you every single day, you'd probably see my trials and tribulations and different aspects of my moods and all of my different human personality traits in their greatest degree. If we lived together and you saw me pretty much every single day and night, even on the weekends, which your work colleagues may not, then you would have a realistic expectation and be able to see all parts of me. So if somebody came up to me and you'd lived with me for 2 or 3 years and they said, Emmanuel, all positive, all nice, all kind, never mean, all cruel, etc., all you'd have to do is look over at my partner and they would have a look at you and they'd basically say, no, I've seen the other side of this guy. I can see that he has benefits and drawbacks, and I've definitely seen him crack it. He's not this whole positive person that you're labeling into. And they'd be able to rattle off a few situations where that had occurred. So for this particular client, I said to her, let's take the men that you're going to go on a date in. And a date is an investment in your time and energy and effort and in a potential partner for life. So I said, if you're going to make such a big investment, it's just like business. It's a wise idea to make sure that you have all the puzzle pieces and you can see them all before you make any decisions. Because if you're making decisions out of infatuation, seeing the positives without the negatives, then they can take advantage of you. And if you're seeing the negatives without the positives, you may never see the blessings that you're getting out of that situation, and it'll occupy time and space in your mind. So before she went on one of her next dates where she really, really cared about the guy, I said to her, she rang me and said, okay, let's play the game. And I said, well, you've known this guy for a while. Let's take everything that you see as a positive in him and let's see the other side of it. And she had a look at his beauty. And she said, this guy that I'm about to date has great beauty. I said, excellent. What is the drawback and the disservice of that? And at the start, she started off slow, but as she really got into it, she went, well, other women constantly look at him. When we go to dinner, I notice that he's looking at other women and he can have their attention. And there's the fact that women message him on Facebook, and we went da 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 da. until she went, oh my God, that beauty has both benefits and drawbacks. It's aesthetically pleasing to look at, but it also has its drawbacks and its negatives. And I can see how having that specific trait also has a downside to it. We also owned where she had beauty in her life, and she'd completely put aside all of the different people at her work, and when she went out and guys had tried to buy her drinks and were messaging her on Facebook basically on a weekly basis, until she saw that she had the beauty that she saw in him. She just hadn't taken the time to have a look and realize that she had an internal and external beauty. She also recognized that his beauty was on the outside, but he had never really had to work too hard on his personality. So he was a little bit slow. And her beauty was external and internal. And a lot of people found that not only was she beautiful on the outside, but on the inside, they could really hold a conversation with her. So once she balanced that perceived traits or the aspects that she saw as more positive than negative, she brought things back into a balance. And this was amazing because I spoke to her after the day too. And she said to me that instead of getting extremely dressed up and overcompensating, feeling that there were certain things that she was trying to prove, she got back from work and she put on her makeup and dressed sexy, but didn't go over the top. And when she was in the date, because she saw a balance between him and her, when they were on their first date, instead of pretending to be all nice and all kind, never mean, everything that he wanted to be so that he would look at her and say she's the ideal female, instead, what she did was, if she agreed with something, she would say it. If she didn't, she would also say it. She saw a balance. She wasn't scared of losing his beauty because she saw that there was no loss. And when she left that date, she felt authentic and original, like she had really expressed who she was as a person. And there was no need for any kind of honeymooning stage. She wanted him to love and appreciate her for who she was. And there were elements, she told me, that during the date, the guy was kind of shocked, like, wow, this is really open and honest. But what she was letting him know was, if you want to invest into me, if you've come on a date, I want to show you all sides of me and break any kind of fantasies so that you don't have to experience that later on and think, who the hell were you? And you were a fake. And that was a really amazing thing for this particular client to be able to own. So I highly recommend breaking all fantasies and delusions, seeing the other side, take the parts of the person that you see the negatives in and also see the benefits of that until you're completely centered and balanced and you're not fearful of losing that person. Only when you're non-fearful of losing someone will you be authentic. The more aspects of a person or a relationship you're fearful of losing, the more you will sacrifice elements of yourself to keep it, only to feel unauthentic and unoriginal, like you're being or playing a certain role just to keep this person. And whenever we're doing that, whenever we're playing roles in order to keep a honeymoon going, we're investing in an illusion. And generally, the time that we spend investing in that illusion is taken away from friends. We financially sacrifice. We take different advantages of work and taking time off and all these other aspects of our life that later on, once the person leaves, if the relationship breaks up, we've got to then pick up all the puzzle pieces and go and acquire those. Whereas if there's a balance and you perceive that there are equally as many benefits as drawbacks, but you're still inspired to be with that person, be authentically you, you're less likely to sacrifice your friendships, you're less likely to sacrifice work and what's truly most valuable and be authentic and let the relationship organically grow, but have an equal appreciation of both sides of yourself and the person that you're with or dating. So honeymoons are illusions. Honeymoons are one-sided. They're not real. No person lives in a honeymoon forever. There is no happily ever after. There's love ever after. And love is a balance of positive and negative. And we all have an opportunity to play that game. The sooner that you see that within a person, the sooner that your heart opens up and you can see the totality in both sides of them and appreciate that and date the real them. So I recommend breaking through all fantasies and delusions, saying goodbye to the honeymoon stage, moving towards the love stage, and true love is a balance of both positive and negative. It'll give you a really wise investment in terms of your time. It'll give you a greater understanding, and it'll let you know whether this person really is or isn't for you and vice versa. So break the honeymoon idea, live in a state of love, gratitude, and balance, learn to appreciate all sides, set more realistic goals, and you'll be much more rational in the way that you see and experience the universe and the world around you. And that doesn't just extend out to relationships, it's also friendships. So before I go, I'll let you know that I have had friendships where I've met males and females and connected with them. And I thought, oh my God, this person's so positive, so cool, so nice, all of these things, unwise ideas and ideologies, and built them up and put them on pedestals, only later on to find out that they had trials and tribulations and they would do certain things that would sacrifice time or go against what I value, and I'd bring them off a pedestal and they'd just be a regular person. So I later on realized that no matter who I met, no matter how much I infatuated over them, it wasn't worth putting them on a pedestal, it wasn't worth putting them in a pit, but it was worth putting them in my heart. But I could only put them in my heart once I learned how to see both sides of them and love them. So whether it's a friend or a relationship or a family member or anybody else, go beyond the honeymoon stage, welcome to reality, see actuality, which is both sides, appreciate who they are, and when you love them for who they are, they become who you love. And you'll set wiser expectations and be much more rational in the way that you connect with them and sacrifice less of what's valuable to you so that they can really love you and find out who you are. So stay authentic, stay inspired. I hope this has been an inspiring Monday post for you, and I look forward to the next time that we connect. Ciao.